Yes, indeed. Folks, it is time, and we welcome you in. 3 guys before the game. Thanks so much for being with us. We promised you. We kept our word. We promised you we would be back. We promised you we would be back sooner than later. And here we are. Yes, indeed. Had great success with our Tariq Phillip episode, the last outing, and we are delighted to switch topics back over to football. And joining us on this episode of the show, not only the Senator Brad Howe, but please welcome to the program. Is one and only too cliche? Can you say, what do you think? Is one and only too much? No. He's one. He is one.
We have not been visited yet by a Super Bowl champion, so I think you can absolutely put that out there.
And yet again, another historic episode of 3 Guys Before the Game, our first ever Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer, Jeff Hostetler. Haas, thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, it's great to be here. How you guys doing?
We're well. And when you came in, man, we kind of like looked back a little bit and went like, God dang, he's all jacked up still. I mean, most of these, when you're 57 years old, when it's been 30 plus years since you last played here, most guys, they come in the door sideways. They just
what about the metabolism slowing down? It's hard to stay in shape. What's happened to that?
You're all cut up. What are you doing?
Everything slows up. I think it's your eyes. When you get older, everybody's eyes go. So maybe I'm looking a little better that way.
Come straight. How many times a week you working out?
Well, it comes and goes. Sometimes I can try to work out 3 or 4 times, but other things get to be a little bit more important. And
I know.
So it's a tough grind.
So when you do work out now, lifting, still lifting?
Yep, still lifting.
So that never left you. Like some guys, when they get done with it, they go like, I'm not picking up a dumbbell. And you're going like, no, I got to do it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of ingrained in me. For some reason, I just I actually feel better when I do it. And through some of the injuries and the wear and tear, it helps me to lift to try to maintain some muscle to alleviate some of the joint pain and things like that. So it's sort of one of those things I kind of have to do to allow me to feel better and
I get it.
Move around.
If you don't, you would hurt.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, it's taken its toll. Time has.
So like by percentage, can you tell how much, like percentage-wise, how much weaker are you than you used to be back when you played? Can you noticeably, like when you lift now, do you go like, holy heck, I can't even do that? Or have you been able to maintain within range where you used to be?
I actually have maintained quite a bit.
Ooh, that's strong. That's strong
which is
right
really
there.
Good. I have 3 sons, and 2 of them lift a lot, and sometimes I'll try to work out with them, and they get mad at me because I'll be gone for a while and then come back and start to bench a little with them. And
so you're racking plates on each side still? You're loading those up?
You're still taunting them.
But they motivate me, I can't be the one that has to take all the plates off for me to get my opportunity. So they keep me hopping.
That's good.
I think the biggest thing for me, though, is from the waist down, you start working those legs and those big muscle parts. Takes a lot of energy and time and stuff like that. Those are the hardest for me to work on.
Do you still have, like when you wake up in the morning, do you have football-related pains that are just always going to be there now, or are you pretty much all right?
You know what? When I do lift and that, I feel better when I do wake up in the morning, but I'm constantly asking people my age or younger, how do you feel? Do you have this? And when they start telling me, they don't have the energy, they ache, they this, that, it actually, I have to sometimes say, excuse me for laughing or smiling, but it makes me feel good that you have those because, I'm trying to compare myself to them. I've had a little bit more wear and tear on myself from other people. So trying to compare, keep notes. And I feel pretty good when I wake up in the morning.
You took some wicked shots.
Yeah, I've made a lot of highlight films for other teams.
You really, you took some blindside shots that were just like head turners you don't want to watch.
Yeah, the game's changed so much now. I'd probably still be playing if the rules were back then. Back then, you were able to take, after you released the football, the rule was that they were allowed to take 2 full steps and take you to the ground. So you can imagine throwing the ball and then 2 full steps and then burying you. And so it was a much different game. Even then, the flags never really came unless you were one of the bigger name guys. So it was tough physically.
And the surfaces, too. That's probably an underrated aspect of that. I mean, it's so much softer. I mean, you were playing on concrete, in essence, with the old AstroTurf, right?
Oh, it was terrible. When I was with the Giants, we probably played 14 games out of the year on turf. Two of them one of them down in Philly, which that was actually like just having green painted concrete.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And you had that defense that, they had Hall of Famers all over the place. That was a tough place to play. When I went to the Raiders, it was like I died and got to heaven. I mean, I think my first year I might have played 13 or 14 games on grass.
Yeah.
It was a huge difference. You could feel it physically. The ability to play on grass all the time. Nothing like playing on grass.
That's probably part of we don't talk enough about the technology changes in that, just what went underneath the old AstroTurf versus how it looks now.
Well, you think of that Pitt Stadium. You played at Pitt Stadium. That was concrete that was painted green.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is when you did get to Oakland, wasn't it always really weird early in the season? You had to play in that stupid dirt. I
love that. I have always loved that. Did you love that or hate that? See, as a fan, I love that look.
As a fan, you could love that look. I hated that look. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, if you went down on that, it was tearing up your skin. You were guaranteed to have a patch missing. It went from the grass, which would come up in clumps, to something that was just rock solid hard.
Yeah.
So we always hated that, and to have that as your home field, it was kind of like, really?
Seriously, it was so stupid because I'm going like, this is the National Football League. Can't we do better than have an infield in the middle of the field?
I love those highlights now. You see those flashbacks.
Yeah.
Well, you think about that, but my biggest thing when I went to the NFL, leaving here at WVU and going to the Giants, we got there at minicamp and went into their weight room. Their weight room had a dirt floor. It was in the belly of the stadium, a dirt floor. It was. I looked at it, I said, you guys are kidding me, right? You're kidding me. And they said, no, this is what we have. Now we're changing it. You'll be the first group to be in this new locker room, but this is what the guys had to do before. I thought, you got to be joking. I mean, this is the NFL. I'm going into the New York Giants, and I'm in a weight room that has a dirt floor.
That's amazing.
So,
in the 80s, I mean, it's not like we're talking 1940 here either.
Right.
No, I know.
That's remarkable.
Exactly
That's
right.
a good point.
Jeff Hostetler's with us. We'll get into more football here in just a couple minutes. But Jeff obviously has been intimately involved in the community since his playing days were over, and he found himself a new passion that literally will impact generations of West Virginians for years to come. And that is your involvement with WVU Medicine, the recent announcement of a children's hospital, a self-standing children's hospital as part of the WVU Medicine campus. And so you had an idea, and you gave me a call, and I liked the idea right from the beginning, and now I've seen that this thing has gotten traction. So let's talk about, I think fans and listeners would find this interesting. So you knew they were going to build a children's hospital, and you said, wait a second, I've got an idea. Let's make it one floor bigger. What was the concept?
Well, again, this has been a passion basically all my life. I grew up in a strong Christian family where my mom used to at times grab me by the ear along with my other, I was one of 7 kids, and we would all take off at times to go help a family that was in need, whether they were struggling with food or with finances or just needed some company. My mom was very aware of that, and she kind of ingrained that in us as we were growing up. And then I have 3 sons and almost lost all 3 at different stages in their lives. And so we experienced the need for a hospital and staff and doctors and nurses of a top-notch quality. Whenever you're in a situation when you need it, when your family needs it, to have that in your home state, at home, where you're near, where you can travel to it and not be out of your comfort zone and things like that, we felt that was really important. We were in a different position during those times. We had the finances to be able to handle that, but most families don't. And so that's become a passion for me since I was playing football here in the NFL. And so we have this involvement in WVU Medicine Children's, and through talking with them, there were some needs that they had. And my wife and I started a family resource center in the hospital a year or 2 ago to help those families that are coming in to try to meet some of their needs. And you come in and you don't realize when they're in to stay Maybe one of the parents can stay, maybe none of them can stay because they've got to maintain their job, they've got to maintain their livelihood as far as with their other siblings, their other children, all those things. When they do stay, how do they provide for food? How do they provide for lodging, laundry? All these things that you never think about unless you've been there. And so we started this resource center inside the hospital, and as we were more and more involved, we realized they're in the process of thinking about building a new children's hospital, a standalone, state-of-the-art, one of the best in the country. And we wanted to be involved. And so thinking about that and being involved and getting excited about it and being on some of the boards involved with it, I found myself thinking about it all the time. How can we make this thing better? How can we continue to improve upon it? What can we do? And so we had this discussion one time in one of our board meetings about the ability to add extra space to put a shell floor on the top of it, and because of the future growth and things that would probably be needed. And I'd go home and think about it. I'd think things through, and at times at night I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't shut my mind off. And I came up with this thought about 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking, hey, if we could get this extra shell building and put this extra shell floor and have it done by athletes, I mean, what would it cost? What would be the requirements? And I'm thinking, how many athletes have come through the doors at WVU? And what have we as athletes that have come through the door, how proud are we as far as being a Mountaineer and the involvement and the fans, the people of our state, how they supported us and loved us and backed us? Why can't we as athletes turn that around and do the same for the families of this state that are in need? And so I was thinking, okay, what would it look like? What could we do? And so I started asking around, and we've probably had 4,000 or 5,000 athletes, football-wise, that may have come through the doors. I know we've had tens of thousands of athletes throughout all of our sports, and you start putting some numbers to that. To do this extra shell would be $7-8 million just to do the shell, but to fill it out, you're probably looking at $7 to $8 million more. And I was looking at the fact, what if we did a part of that, the front section of it, that we would overlook the stadium, the ability to do some things during games, have our own Iowa thing, and do something the Mountaineer way, and it being done by former players, former athletes that have come through the door, do it on their dollar. Has it ever happened before? And so I did a lot of research. It's never happened before. It's never been done throughout the country. And so I started making some rounds, just throwing some things out. I talked to President Gee, and I talked to Shane Lyons. I've talked to those in the foundation. And just to throw things out, and they all, Dr. Gee was awesome. He just said, let me look into that. I love the idea. Boy, wouldn't that be amazing? And then next thing you know, he emails me this note and says, it's never been done. Do you know it's never been done? I said, yeah, I know it's never been done. And he said, this would be awesome to get that kind of involvement. So it was one of those things that I thought, how do you do it? How do you bring this large group together? And I've become overwhelmed. I'm thinking, how can I do that? I can't. And then I just started thinking, listen, it's one step at a time, and, gather some guys along you and let them take a step. And as they gather others along them, let them take a step. And it's something that, as an athlete, whenever somebody tells you, oh, you can't do that, or you're not good enough, or you're this or that, it drives us. And so when, I heard these things and say, good luck, but I don't think it's going to happen, it started to drive me. And so, one thing led to another. I thought, how do I get the ball rolling? And so I thought, if I put some money in, if I earmark something for this, something big, can I find 10, 15 other guys that'll match me? And let's get this thing started. And once we have those matches, let's go after each individual that played here at WVU. Men, women's sports, baseball, basketball, football, wrestling, soccer, tennis, all of them. And I just thought, well, if we can do that, and we can start at a number that almost anybody can reach, and we can do it over years. We don't have to do it in one lump payment. We can do it over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and started thinking, can we do this? So I thought, okay, I'm going to make 5 or 6 calls to some guys that I've just come across recently that I think maybe can match me. And Marc Bulger was the first guy I talked to, and Marc jumped right in on it. He said, Jeff, he said, I don't need anything else but what you're saying to me. If it happens, if it can happen like that, I'm in. I talked to Jerry West. I talked to Jed Jerko. I talked to some guys football-wise. And, they all jumped in and said, yeah, I'll do it. And I talked to probably 10 to 15 guys to a point where, we're probably close to halfway there through 10 or 15 guys. And that's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's our start. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to divide it down into maybe years. My senior year, 22 to 27 guys that were seniors that year. And let's divide it up there and let's work our way through that. Let's get everybody involved. I want a place for these guys and girls, these women, to come into that building and be able to sign, put their mark on it, to sign their name, to say they're part of it. Let's start a legacy. It's something that nobody else has ever done. And it's something that we as athletes can do to give back. It's something that we can, here in the future, future athletes recruiting, whoever, parents coming in, we can say to them, look what our former athletes have done. This is what we're trying to promote. This is what we're about. This is what being a Mountaineer is about.
Yeah, and it's a Mountaineer floor. The top floor would be a Mountaineer floor, and for those, and maybe we can get a shot of this here, we'll tell people how to get this brochure. Boy, for those watching, that is a very bad picture because the camera's too far away, so I put our guy on the spot right there. But anyway, it looks, to be quite honest with you, it looks like the inside of the Mountaineer locker room.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it a Mountaineer theme. Have lockers, have guys that have donated to do this, have certain lockers and do certain things, pictures, autographs, all those kind of things that, and in a locker room atmosphere where parents, kids that are coming into that hospital won't realize they're in a hospital. We take them away from it.
Right.
And there's the ability to do something that very few people get the opportunity to go into a locker room and see all the ins and outs of it, to see the lockers, to see the weight room, to see the equipment room, all those things. And what we would like to try to do is emulate that and give our families and our kids the ability and their siblings the ability to come in and do certain things while they're looking for the resources that are needed. And that's we're hoping it to be the hub of the hospital. So it's a big project, but one step at a time, we can do it.
Yeah, fantastic. We want to share. I want to give you the web address for those that want to take a look at this. So you ready to go? Get a pen or pencil. It doesn't have to be a number 2 pencil, but here it is, give.wvu.edu. give.wvu.edu/WVU Medicine-Children's. So it's give.wvu.edu/WVU Medicine-Children's, and you'll get a look at that. And that's a great, that's a national idea, because when this thing happens, they're going to go, look what WVU's athletes did, and that will be an amazing legacy. So that's the future home of WVU Medicine-Children's. Fantastic. We'll give you that info at the end as well. All right. Want to do some more football here?
Sounds good.
Okay, so here's the deal. You saw or heard recently the transfer rule is changing, where schools can no longer block kids from going to another school. You transferred here from Penn State, and even though Penn State was playing West Virginia annually at that time, did you have any pushback as for them to say, oh, fine, Jeff, you can go to WVU?
I had pushback, but I also had some ammunition. So,
what do you mean? What's that mean?
And so I was actually one of the first to transfer out of Penn State and actually go to a competing school and be have the opportunity to play against them. It did not happen before that, and there were a lot of things that went into that. But
what do you mean by that?
Things that would make you shake your head and say, nah, not there at Penn State. Yeah, there at Penn State. And there was a reason that I had the opportunity to come down here. And
blackmail. It was blackmail.
No, it was the truth. The truth will set you free.
Yeah.
So
you basically said, hey, I'm going there. I want to go there. And they went, like, no. And you go, no. And they went, okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's
I had a long meeting with Joe and with my parents. I had 2 older brothers that had played there, had a relationship with them. deserved to play there, deserved to start there. And, my case was solid, and I had the opportunity to leave. They never tried to stop me. It was the best move I've ever could have made. I came down and found a home, found home for life, and I'm an adopted West Virginian by choice. Found my wife and my family, and it's been an awesome decision.
It's amazing when you do think about that, how those decisions impacted your entire life. How was it ever close to you just acquiescing and saying, fine, I'll be a linebacker, I'll skip the quarterback then? Did you even contemplate it?
Oh yeah, there were times when I thought about it, because quarterbacking was actually the least favorite position that I played in football. And I'm not quite sure why I chose that end of it. I started out in high school, I was a quarterback and I was a linebacker. I punted, I kicked off, I returned punts, I returned kickoffs. I never left the field. But out of all those positions, linebacking was my favorite. I was actually probably built for it. Plus, I had two older brothers that played at Penn State, and they taught me all the technique. Very, very technique-oriented, and you couldn't have been taught by any better than, at that time, the linebackers at Penn State. So I was ready for that. I had the size, speed, build for it. But I wanted to go a different direction. I wanted to play quarterback. And my senior year, I started out playing quarterback. After my first game, we lost our tailback. We didn't have a tailback. Can you imagine this happening now? My head coach came to me and said, Jeff, will you move from quarterback to tailback and let your younger brother play quarterback? And I looked at him, I said, well, we don't have a tailback. Yeah, I'll do it. And, so I moved to tailback. So my senior year, I didn't play quarterback. I was a tailback. I threw the ball at different times, but my younger brother was the quarterback. So I ended up becoming a parade All-American as a linebacker, played a running back during the year, and wanted to be recruited as a quarterback, which is what I ended up being recruited as.
Isn't that amazing? And then you come here and you turn into one of the program's all-time greatest quarterbacks. But when you started, so we were talking before the show, 36 years ago, we're coming up on the season opener, 36 years ago, that game against Oklahoma. When you think about that, you're a busy guy, but when you sit and think about that, does it feel like it was almost 4 decades ago? Can you remember? It does. You feel every bit of it. Does it feel like another life ago? Does it feel like it happened to somebody else?
It feels like a long time ago. Yeah. But then when I start thinking about it, it does feel like it was yesterday. Some of the memories are so vivid. I can remember being out there leading up to the game, throughout the summer, and that Coach Nealon was constantly saying we were going to kill their horse because it was going to be running out there with that stinking whatever. And it was going to be hot, and we were going to kill it because it was going to be constantly running. And, we just didn't want that happening. The last time we had gone out, we were embarrassed. And, we were prepared. We knew that we had a chance, and we went out. We were down 14 right away, and there was no panic on the sideline. We knew that we could get this thing done. And I think in a span of, 6-7 minutes, the whole game turned. And I can remember that place being a sea of red. It was 113 on the field, and it was a sea of red. And we went in there at halftime, having just gone up, and there was all this excitement. And I can remember yelling at guys saying, listen, it's halftime, all right? Let's stay at it. Let's win this thing. Let's stay focused. And everybody was doing the same thing. We were focused. We were going to go out. We were going to do the things. We were prepared. No one had given us a shot. And when we won that game, I can still see Curlin Beck. It was like the gates opened wide. And we ran a draw, and he was right up the middle scoring. And that was the first time during that game that I actually felt like we're going to win this thing. And having won that and seeing that sea of red start to disappear out through everything, and being in the locker room and the excitement there, and then coming out of the locker room, that sea of red seemed to all come down around our locker room. And it was the most impressive sight of opposing fans that I've ever been involved with, of how congratulatory, how positive they were, what a great job you guys did. It was amazing. I mean, it absolutely was amazing. And, we got on the bus, onto the plane. Everybody's cramping up. We lose all kinds of weight and this and that, but we're all excited to get home. And we're just a little bit outside of Morgantown. And at that time, you didn't have the cell phones and all that stuff. But word got to us that there were some people there waiting for us. And, it was, I don't know if it was 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but there was people there waiting for us. And so, some guys were excited. Everybody was tired. I remember the headlights of our bus coming in and pulling into the parking lot in front of the hospital. That's where they wanted us to pull in. And we're thinking, why are we pulling in there? Well, as they pulled in, it seemed like the whole parking lot was moving. It was like it was moving, and we're thinking, what am I seeing there? That whole thing, it was people, and it was packed. And it was so packed that when we came into the bus, the people were pounding on the bus. They were so excited. Some of the guys in the bus were, oh, man, what are they doing? What are they doing? But we were so excited that all these people showed up, to congratulate us and to welcome us home. It's that point that we realized that, our program changed. It forever will be changed because of that day.
Mm-hmm. Fair to say that's your most memorable game at WVU?
I think it was the most memorable for me just because of what it did for us as a program. Again, not giving us a chance, and to go out in a hostile environment and a top 10 team and go ahead and whip them and come back. Plus, for me personally, it was the first game after transferring from Penn State that I was allowed to play, and it gave me an opportunity to show that I belonged there.
Yeah, that probably got back to State College that day as well. Remember the kid you wanted to keep as a linebacker? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Had a pretty good day as a quarterback here.
How different was that victory and that feel as to when you walked off the field as a Super Bowl champion?
Well, I tell you what, as a Super Bowl champion, I think when you made the steps from high school to college, then college to the NFL, and then the NFL regular season to playoff games, and then playoff games to the Super Bowl. Each one of them was a huge step. If you look at the film of me after we won the Super Bowl, I'm kneeling on the sidelines when Scott Norwood's lining up to kick a field goal that he had never made on grass. 47 yards, never made one on grass. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. Just having felt like I had given it all I could, laid everything out on the line. And I said, Lord, thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to play. I thank you for what you've allowed me to do. And whatever it is from this point on, I'm just going to soak it in. And I can remember just kneeling there and watching, hearing the thump and seeing that official underneath going, no good. And I just stayed there. There's video of me. Everybody took off running that, and I still stayed kneeling. Because I wanted to soak it in, and it was an amazing feeling, having done something that nobody said you could do, and being in a position of waiting, persevering, having the opportunity and taking advantage of it. It was a great day.
I think something that may get lost with folks that don't know you, younger people that don't realize. Well, you talk about being patient in an era where I've got to play now or else you waited a long time to get your opportunity. How many years was it? 7?
6.5 years.
6.5,
yeah. So you just think about 6.5 years ago, where you were at. Think of the athletes today. If they had to wait for 6.5 years, would they even be there? What would they be like when the opportunity came? Would they be prepared? I know Lord had me there for a reason, and to be prepared to be able to take advantage of that opportunity at that time says a lot. It's something that I'm proud of as far as an accomplishment, to be prepared for that. But it was 6 weeks earlier than that where I had sat down, and people don't know this, I sat down at the dinner table with my wife. I had a great preseason that year, played really, really well. I saw action in a game early in the season when Sims went down, and we were down at one point in that game 19-10 with, I think, under 5 minutes to go, and was able to lead us back, and we won the game 20-19. And it was my first opportunity to be in a situation like that where, the guys around me surrounded me, and they knew that I had arrived, that I could do it. They were in good hands. And it was weeks later where we were in a game against Dallas, and the game, I think we were up at 14 points or 7 points. I can't remember, but the game, it wasn't determined, and it was in the third quarter some point. Sims was okay, not hurt. Offense was getting ready to go out onto the field. All of a sudden, Parcells turns around and yells, "Hostetler, you're in." And I'm thinking, did I just hear that? He goes, "Hostetler, you're in." I had to go to the bench to grab my helmet, get up. I drive us down. I scored on a scramble to put us up, I think, 14 or 21. And it was one of the tests that Parcells had done, and I passed. And the guys, offensively, defensively, had seen me for 6.5 years. And, those guys realized how tough it was. They rallied around me, and they knew, at that point, I knew that I could play the game, and I knew that they knew I could. And then it dried up. It disappeared. I didn't see the field. And I can remember coming home with my wife. It was after a Wednesday's practice, and I just sat down after dinner with her, and I said, "Honey, I'm done. I'm done. After the season, we're going back to Morgantown, and I'll find something else to do. I can't do it anymore. I can't handle it anymore." That particular week, Sims went down, and I started the rest of the way. 6 weeks later, won the Super Bowl. So, I have a mom and dad that at the time my mom was a prayer warrior, and she constantly would be praying for me and constantly telling me, "God's got a plan for you. Stay diligent. Just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going." And I could see that through my dad. Growing up on a farm, things break down. Always things are breaking down. Things just don't go well, but he never quit. He just continued to plug away. And so those attributes and those gifts from my parents, helped me stay prepared and drove me.
It's remarkable, too, now that you're removed from that, when you look back on that team and the collection of people, not only the Phil Simms, but Parcells, one of the giants of the NFL, Belichick, right? I mean, now the modern NFL, considered the greatest coach ever to be there, Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, the guys in the locker room that were around you. What's your memory? Can you pull something out when you think of that particular group, be it Parcells, Belichick, any of them? What comes to mind?
Well, I think one of the things you realized after Parcells was gone, I never saw eye to eye with Bill. After the Super Bowl, he never congratulated me. He never said anything positive to me. The only thing that I had read, somebody showed it to me, was that he did a good job. He asked about Hostetler. He said he did a good job. And then they asked about next year, and he said, "Well, I've got my boy Phil Simms." And that was the only thing. And so learning the mind games and the things that go along with playing in the NFL at that time, being part of this talented group. You look back at it and you see the guys and what they have done. Coaching staff. I mean, these guys have gone on to have great coaching careers and done things that are amazing. But the players, for me, it was the players that meant the most, because it was not only the guys on offense who I'd been around all the time, but I think the thing that stood out for me was the defensive players. Because when Phil went down, those were the guys that rallied around me, and constantly I would hear how they had confidence in me and that they were going to take care of things on their end, and they had every confidence in me that I was going to take things in control and do what I needed to do. Those were the guys that I think, for me, the Carl Banks, the LT, the defensive linemen. I mean, these guys were just phenomenal for me. And we were playing the 49ers with Joe Montana, and they took a cheap shot on me and took me out of the game for a while. Our defense was absolutely amazing. They hit the field, and I knew Joe Montana was not going to last. I mean, I knew it, because these guys were not going to stand for what they did to me.
They took that personally, that they dinged
took it
you.
Personally. And, to have other guys step up and know that they had your back, it's pretty special. So it was a special group of players and guys and coaches that I was involved with.
I've got to ask you a Belichick question. I don't know how much interaction you would have had, but was he the Bill Belichick that we see now on the sideline back then? Was he the same guy, or was he a different guy?
He's mellowed now. I mean, he's mellowed compared to what he was. He was a detail guy. He was short-fused. He wanted it perfect. He knew what he wanted to run, and he had his ways. My claim to fame with Bill, though, was my rookie year. I am a rookie quarterback with 3 other veterans on the roster. I have got Bill Parcells as a head coach who did not want to draft me, and so I wasn't one of his guys. I had Ron Earhart as a quarterback coach who'd been in the league forever. His offense is still being run by Patriots, by the Steelers. The things that it's probably the best offense that I've ever been involved with as far as being consistent, verbiage, all those things. And so I'm involved with all these guys. They're all veterans. And, I'm thinking this is a tough situation for me to come into. And so I'm scared, basically. I'm thinking, if I make a mistake, these guys aren't going to have any patience with me. Well, I would run a little bit of the 7-on-7 for the defense. And Belichick would always have these cards out, and he would show us what he wants us to do. And then he would turn where the center would be. He would turn, and he would watch his defense. And so we were running all these crossing routes. And so all of a sudden, we're running these crossing routes, and he stands right there where the center is. I drop back, and it's a 2-yard crossing route. And I drill it to the guy. Well, all of a sudden, Bill's head is right in the way. It hits him in the head. His papers fly everywhere. The ball flies everywhere. Everybody stops. And it's like everything just went quiet. It's like, uh-oh. And then he starts ripping into me and yelling at me and grabbing his papers and that. After that was over with, I had almost every defensive player come up to me and say, "Hey, great job, Hoss. Great job." And it was like I was accepted,
So that took the tension away right there, right?
That took the tension away. Yeah. Bill Belichick, he hated me after that, but my only response to him was, "Well, don't stand there." And
that's where the crossing route goes. Yeah.
As a rookie quarterback, it was tough.
Wow, that's a great story. You're hearing more, and we're seeing more in regard to the game and the injuries that not necessarily occur during play, but the lingering impact of injuries. When you see that, what's going on in your mind?
I live it, so I know the physical part of it. I know the wear and tear that it has on you. I know the injuries, some of the things at that point that I did to get back on the field were absolutely stupid. I wish at that point we would have had somebody there to help us through those times. But it was the mentality. It was if you weren't on the field, somebody else was stepping in and you were going to lose your job. There was no security. There weren't any big signing bonuses. They could cut you at any time and you were gone. You didn't get anything else. So no security there, no financial security that you could try to protect yourself and your body and knowing that you couldn't go. I did so many stupid things to try to get on the field that was the norm. It was what was expected of you.
Define stupid. What kind of stuff?
Playing with injuries that you should never be walking on the field with, playing through things, being shot up, those types of things that just aren't acceptable, but were back then. That was the game. And I think for me, seeing those things, I've come out, I've got a workers' comp file that they filed for me that's probably 5 inches thick. When I went in to see the team's doctor who was going to try to tear all this down and say that, none of these injuries amount to anything for you down the road, he took about 15 minutes and read things, and then he kind of started laughing. And he looked at me and he said, "Jeff, I'm sorry." He said, "This is ridiculous. I don't mean to be laughing, but this is ridiculous." And he went through these things, and he just said, "It's ridiculous what you went through. And whatever you have in here, I'm going to go through them. Some of them, I may even rate them higher than what you have because this is ridiculous." And, so I know, what it's like physically and the toll that it takes. I think the thing that concerns me the most now is the concussion stuff because that was completely unregulated. It's a complete unknown. What we played through, that's the thing that bothers me the most. That's the thing that I'm concerned the most, I worry about the most.
Mm-hmm. To your knowledge, I mean, you always seem extremely sharp mentally. Do you ever have any forgetful times?
Well, that's one of those things where I go again. I ask everybody that's my age and younger, do you forget stuff? Do you have trouble finding some words once in a while? I evaluate that all the time, and it's something that I'm hyper aware of. And I'm hoping that what I've experienced so far is just natural age progression. It's something that I will keep battling and keep hoping that isn't anything else than just the natural progression. But you just never know.
Yeah. Your brothers played, your nephews play in the NFL. Obviously, the Hostetler family and football have walked together. Do you think the game can be made safer so that it has a long-term future?
I do. I do. I think what they're doing right now is just the tip of the iceberg. And they're not doing it because they wanted to do it. They've been forced to do it. So it's not like it's one of those things where they really care about what the players are going through. It's affecting their possibilities of a future. So they're forced to do it, which is a good thing because it needs to be addressed. The technology that they've come up with, I think, is all beneficial and will help. And as more and more people are involved, I think the things that they come up with are going to be very valuable. How they've controlled the game is another. I don't know. I look at it and watch it sometimes and get really frustrated and thinking, how in the world can you prevent that? How can that happen? How can you penalize those guys? So I don't have an answer for that. I don't think it's an easy fix, but I think getting back to the tackling part and getting back to some of those basics, some of those things, getting the head out of the game, I think is huge. With the helmets and how they have been and the face masks, I mean, that's how we were taught. I mean, you lead with that helmet, lead with that face mask, and that's not the case anymore. And I think that's the big thing. I think if they can continue to do that and continue to come up with some of the things that they are doing with the game and the equipment and that, I think that's going to be huge for it.
Do you think that continues as long as the NFL keeps driving that bus? It keeps filtering down? Because it's not, obviously the hits don't just start taking place when you get to the NFL level. There's a big push, high school, college, youth football. Do you feel like changes are working their way down the funnel?
Oh, I definitely do. I think the NFL is smart enough. They are, in my mind, one of the top marketing groups that there is. What they've done with this game and how they've marketed it and the success that they've had with that game is amazing. And they realize that they've got to start this from a very young age up because those are our future players. And if we start losing all of our future players, the game's going to end. So they're focusing on that. They've got different types of camps. A lot of these guys that are playing in the game today are involved in some of those things. So they have opportunities to do some of those things and to help teach. So I think it has filtered down. I think they realize that it needs to filter completely down to that level, and that's on everything, not just the techniques, but also the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Given the opportunity to take one more snap in an NFL game, could you still take a snap and get one playoff?
Oh, I definitely could take a snap. I'd hand it off, or it'd be a shovel pass or a screen. So. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely take a snap, but after that, I don't know what.
How much longer do you think Brady can go? When you look at knowing what it takes, the rigors of what it takes. I mean, It's
the mental part. That's the game. I mean, you can keep yourself physically to a point where you can play that game, especially at that position. His game's never been running around with the football, so he can do that. And he's never had the cannon of an arm, so he's got the technique down. He's a smart guy. He's always prepared. It's when I decided it was time for me to go, it was not so much the physical part, but it was the mental part. I just didn't have the desire, the push, the commitment to put in the time needed to do it. And I think that's where he'll find that he knows it's time to put it up. That's one of those ones where how much it takes of you to get it ready and to do it. And when you start seeing that decline a little bit, it's time to hang him up.
Call it quits. He's 57. He can still play. Jeff Hostetler, our guest on Three Guys Before the Game. And I want to give one more mention because there could be former athletes from WVU that are listening. But, yeah, I would imagine, Jeff, even though that's the designation, if there's someone else out there that says, I have green money too, and I'd love to contribute, they can certainly get involved, correct?
They definitely can. We've got on this floor, we're going to have the first children's cancer center of the state. And there are all kinds of naming opportunities on this floor to do other things within the floor. So my goal here was to bring our athletes, have a little skin in the game,
Mm-hmm.
their earnings to be part of this so that they can actually own part of this, so that they can be a part of it to set that legacy. And of course, then let's try to match it. Let's have people come out and say, hey, I'll match what you guys can do. And I'd love to be able to do that, to challenge, to compete. That's what we're about. But, the name of that is I Am a Mountaineer. And I could not think of a better way or a more descriptive way to describe what we're trying to do than to be called a Mountaineer, because it's such a huge compliment. I've been a Mountaineer. I know what it takes to be part of a team of Mountaineers. They look out for each other. They cover each other's back. They're always there. And this is a great opportunity for us as athletes that have come through the doors here at WVU to come back and say, I am a Mountaineer, and let's show it. Let's do it. Let's leave a legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put this into all the promotion on the podcast. We will give you this URL, but if you'd like to take it, it is give.wvu.edu/WVU medicine-children's. And you can take a look at all of the information there. I am a Mountaineer. Well, this has been good, man. We really enjoy it. Huh?
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys taking the time. And
you told a bunch of good stories. So you blackmailed Paterno, you beamed Belichick. I mean, that was it. Parcells never liked you. I mean, we can just go down.
There's some good headlines right there,
You
Jeff.
almost called it quits 6.5 weeks before you win a Super Bowl. I mean, that's a couple of bell ringers.
Hey,
right?
It was.
I married the coach's daughter.
Married a coach's daughter.
Wow.
That's you know what? It's better than it's bigger than a podcast. It's a movie. We'll do the movie one of these days. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Jeff Hostetler, our guest, will be back later on. Another episode coming up. We'll bounce back to basketball, so do stay with us for that. Meantime, time to fire up the band. Yeah, there it is. We are out. Thanks so much for listening to Three Guys Before the Game. Spread the word. Let people know. Give us a rating on our podcast, iTunes, or wherever you are listening. Thanks for being with us. Three Guys Before the Game. We will see you down the road.